walking down the street and you have 6 jackets on, you know, it's snowing out, but you only need 5 jackets. And you see a poor guy and he has no jacket. You just take one off and give it to him. It's no sweat off your back. It's a little sweat off your back. You'll sweat less, which is good. So Sanatana Goswami said, you should do that, even though he's not a devotee, even though it's not devotional service. He said, why? Because it's a mentality. It's a mentality of serving others, which will carry over. Another explanation the Acharyas give is, when we say we should be humble, it means humble to everyone. When we say there's offenses, there's called Vaishnava Aparadha, and there's Jana Aparadha. Jana means people in general. So if you commit offenses to people in general, tendency is to commit offenses to devotees. So they talk about it as a mentality, you know, selfish mentality. So here we see the same thing in the Gita. It's so interesting. Krishna's saying, well, you know, if you're for whatever reason, you can't even do karma yoga, just do something for somebody other than yourself. Because if you want to get out of the entanglement of the material world, you have to stop thinking about yourself. So here Prabhupada's saying, train the mind to think about the welfare of others. And here we're seeing in the Gita, even if that welfare is material, if that's all you could do. Or as Sanatana Goswami says, you know, there's a traffic light, there's a poor guy, you have a big plate of prasadam. You don't really need it, give it to him. Of course, a lot of those poor guys don't like prasadam. They drink too much beer, prasadam doesn't taste good. I've seen that also. Unfortunately. They're eating prasadam, they go, no, I want money. Because they want to buy alcohol. So that's another issue. But that point is there. Stop serving yourself, because that's how you got entangled in this world, and that's why you're here. Which also brings up another point, which is so interesting. I think we've all thought of this. Well, I've become a devotee. I've decided to dedicate my life to Krishna, so why is my mind still a non-devotee? As Rabindra Swarup said, you became a devotee, but your mind didn't. There's no way, I'm not doing this. But in my meditation on this, I've taught courses on this particular topic, and my realization is, and you can find it in a verse in 11th canto which confirms this, is that so many lifetimes of thinking about ourselves, there's this momentum. So you become a devotee and the mind's got its own momentum. So it keeps thinking that way. So you, as the soul and intelligence, are like, okay, we're going into Krishna consciousness, and the mind's like, oh, whatever. You know, you've trained me up for 1,000,000 lifetimes to think about sense gravitation, so that's all I know, and that's what I'm going to do, which explains why the mind is such a rascal, right? So then, in dealing with the mind, it's like we're dealing with another entity within our body, and then you have conversations. You know, I was telling myself. Who was telling who? You know, so that's like, you know, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Who's telling who? Well, this is prayers to the mind. This is manasiksha, right? Instructions to the mind. It's very, you know, Govinda Das prays to his my dear mind. There's so many my dear minds, and someone may come to Krishna consciousness and look at this and think, like, these guys are Looney Tunes. You know, they're all, you know, like talking to their minds. Because that's what crazy people do. You ever seen them? You're just talking. So Prabhupada said, you know, obviously it's us talking to our mind, it's the soul. But you might say, but it seems like it's intelligence, like my intelligence is trying to reason with my mind. But Prabhupada said, the intelligence is the next door neighbor of the soul. So whether it's the soul or intelligence, it's the same thing, because the intelligence generally represents us, you know, the guidance that the mind needs. So here we are, we have this conditioned mind which is just thinking about what do I like and what I don't like. And funny as it is, you hear a class, you should think like this, don't think like that. Class is over 3 minutes later, you're thinking like that again, because you've been thinking like that for like 10 zillion, quadzillion, billion lifetimes. So you know, one class is not enough, right? You get it in your intelligence, so when your mind goes this way, you go, oh, I'm not supposed to think that way. But it's conditioned. So this is what we're experiencing. So what does our Shastra say? What does Prabhupada say? Well, you may know this purport. It's in the 5th canto where Prabhupada compares the mind to an animal that hunters captured. You know that purport? So once you capture it, if you got it in the trap, don't let it out because it'll run away. So if you can't trust the mind, so don't think, oh, I'm very Krishna conscious, I'm beyond all this, I don't worry about it. He said, no, don't trust your mind. And another place, Prabhupada gave a very simple instruction about how to deal with the mind, which is just neglect it. Now when you think about it, that's the perfect instruction, isn't it? Because if your mind is thinking about something which is not Krishna conscious, and it's detrimental, if you don't neglect it, what happens? Dayato vishayam punsam sangas keshu vijayate sangat sanjayate kama kama krodha vijayate. So what happens is, a thought, oh, that's nice, I like that. But that thing that you like is not Krishna conscious. So, what happens now? What does Prabhupada say? That is a wrong thought, neglect it. If you neglect it at that point, there's no energy, you give no energy to that thought. What happens to the thought? Fizzles out, right? What happens if you give energy to the thought? And you give energy by meditating on it. Stage 2. Stage 1, that looks nice. Stage 2, I like that. You know what's so interesting about this verse? This is the basis of advertising. Yeah. Meditate on it, get attached, at a certain point you have to buy it. And that's why they say, in the days of magazine ads, you don't sell it on the first issue ad, you don't sell it on the second, they start selling on the third because people have seen it. So all these ads, you have to keep seeing them. And after a while, oh, that looks good. So Prabhupada's saying, if you have the wrong thought, what do? Just neglect it. Because if you don't, you give energy to it, and then you go to stage 2. And it's much harder to pull out of it at stage 2 than it is at stage 1. Stage 1's easy, isn't it? Dayato. That looks nice. Nip it. You've got a lot of power to nip it in stage 1. Stage 2, you're already weak at stage 2. And stage 3, at stage 3, don't even waste your time talking. Stage 3, it's our decision is already made at stage 3. I'm going through it, right? You go into the store to buy one thing, you get into stage 2 with something else. If you stay in the store long enough, this is statistical. The longer you stay in a store, the more you buy, because there's more chance of going into stage 2. 3 comma, I can't live without this. Right? So Prabhupada's message is quite wise, isn't it? Okay, we have the wrong thought. We know why we have the wrong thought. Those thoughts were implanted lifetimes ago. So now I become a devotee, those thoughts are still going to be there, and so you need strategy to deal with them. Neglect them, don't trust the mind. And better yet, engage the mind in thinking about serving others. Understand this. I think any devotee, any preacher knows this well. Especially if you're a temple president. I've been a temple president many times. And so as a temple president, devotees will come to you and say, I have this problem. Right? So you talk and you help them with the problem. And you notice what you've actually done is just change their story a little bit. They came in thinking this devotee is bad, and this is bad, and this is right, and this is wrong. And you re-explain it. No, this devotee isn't bad, this is not really wrong. And they come out and they're really happy. Have you ever seen, I think any leader has seen that. You're reframing their perception of a situation. They come, oh, I thought it was this. No, that's not why he said it. He really likes you. He just said it for this reason. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, it's not a problem. Okay, thank you. Or, I feel so unfortunate. No, you're fortunate because Krishna actually separated you from your problem, but it was painful. But if you would have continued that way, it would have been bad for you. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true, And you come out and you're fine, like nothing was wrong. Isn't it? So what have you done to solve the problem? You didn't do anything with the external situation. You just changed the story. And now you have a new story. I'm so unfortunate. Why does this always happen to me? No, Prabhu, you're supposed to think something worse should have happened to me. This was just a little token. Oh, really? I'm supposed to think that way? Yeah, it's right there in the Bhagavatam. Oh, wow, I never looked at it that way. Oh, thank you. They're fine. They were coming in ready to commit suicide. They come out and like, hey, everything's great. Have you seen that? Have you experienced it yourself? Yeah. So I think this verse kind of explains that phenomenon. This is from the 11th canto. So this was spoken by the Avanti Brahmin, and the Avanti Brahmin was very much hated by people because before he renounced, he was a miser. And he just drove everyone crazy. He drove his family crazy. He didn't give them anything. They kicked him out. Everyone in the village hated him. His family hated him. He'd sit down to eat. They passed urine on his food. I mean, they hated him. And you know, this is his response to all of that going on. People just harassing him. What else did they do? Who remembers? What else did they do to him? They urinated in his food, right? Yes? Am I correct? I think so. What else did they do? Anyone remember? Cursed him. What else? Anyway, he was being harassed. So this is what he's asked. So, kya hai? What's going on here? How do you see it? And he said, these people are not the cause of my happiness and distress. Neither are the demigods, my own body, the planets, my past work or time. So he's not blaming it on anything, not even his own karma. I mean, go down the list. Who could be, if you have a problem, who would you blame? Other people, right? So he says, not the people, demigods, they don't like me, Indra's, envious of me, my own body, the planets, my astrology, my karma, time. He said, no, it's the mind alone that causes happiness and distress and perpetuates the rotation of material life. Failing to conquer this irrepressible enemy, the mind, whose urges are intolerable and who torments the heart, many people are completely bewildered and create useless quarrel with others. Thus they conclude that other people are either their friends, their enemies, or parties indifferent to them. So basically what he's saying is, what's happening is not the problem, it's your story about what's happening. And I want to tell a story to illustrate this because, Krishna consciousness is all about seeing through the eyes of Shastra, and Shastra changes the story, isn't it? How many times have you ever said, why did this happen to me? I didn't deserve it. Where is that in Shastra? You didn't deserve it. Did anybody show me the verse? Shastra says, you deserve worse. What are you talking about? So why did this happen to me? I didn't deserve it. You're supposed to be walking around thinking, thank you, Krishna, I deserve so much worse. So as a counselor, people come to me and this is what they say, this is what's happening, I didn't deserve it. These are devotees all the time. They tell me their story and how bad it is and why they didn't deserve it. This is common. It's like 100%. Everyone who has a problem tells me the story and cries on my shoulder. And so crying on the shoulder is another way of saying I didn't deserve it. Isn't that funny? And I rewrite the story and they go out and they're fine. And that's what a counselor does. They rewrite the story. Isn't it? So here's a little fairy tale story that illustrates that it's not what happens to you, but it's what you tell yourself. Oh, this Prabhu, he just said this to me. That means A, B, C, D, E, F. And I go in my room and I'm packing my bags, I'm leaving ISKCON. That's my story, right? So, once upon a time, there was a little baby cub lion whose parents abandoned him. And in the forest, near where the lion was born, were a group of bears. And there was a whole family of little bear cubs, his same age. And I didn't know this, but if you go on Google, you can see that certain species of bear cubs look just like lions when they're cubs. So this lion was adopted by the bear cubs because they thought he was a bear. So he was just like a brother, just part of the family, grew up, played with them, hugged them, kissed them, whatever little bears do. And one day, when he got a little older, they started to notice that he looked different. But they all thought he was a bear. He thought he was a bear, and they thought he was a bear.
And they're looking at him like, something's wrong with him. You know, it's like, this is an embarrassment to the family. I mean, he's like really ugly. You know, he's like, what are the neighbors going to think type thing, you know. So as he grows, he's really getting what they thought to be quite ugly for a bear. And they thought there's really something wrong with him. And so one very unhappy day, they said, you have to leave because you're weird. You're like either you're mentally ill, you're retarded, you're a mutation, you're like the 8,400,000 first species. We don't know what you are, but you have to go. So he goes, and now he's lamenting, he's crying, and he's like so depressed. And one Sankirtan devotee, we'll call him Gauradas, because Gauradas likes to do Sankirtan, and he saw the lion's name is Kashi. And Gaura said, Kashi, what's wrong? You're so depressed. He goes, yeah, I'm a retarded bear. I'm a mutation. Gaura's like, what are you talking about? You're not a bear. He goes, I'm a retarded, mentally ill, deformed bear. I'm like the most unfortunate bear. My family first I'm rejected by my birth family, then I'm adopted and they rejected me. It's just like, well, I'm so miserable and depressed. I was like, you know, you got any Prozac? I'm just like, or whatever you call it in Canada. Same Prozac. You know, I'm just depressed. And Gaura says, Kashi, you're not a bear, you're a lion. He's like, what are you talking about, lion? I'm a bear. I was born a bear. I was raised by bears. Kashi, you were never a bear. You were a lion. And Kashi's like, I was never a bear? No. And Gaura's like, no, you idiot. You were never a bear. You were always a lion. And Kashi's like, really? So he's starting to pick up, you know. Really? You mean I'm a lion? Kashi! You're a lion, the king of the jungle. I mean, I'm a lion, king of the... So what happened? Gaura changed the story. Nothing changed. Absolutely nothing. Right? The only thing that changed was the story. So the mind is expert at making up stories. And as a result, we suffer. Or we don't suffer. All right, can you all think of a story you made up once upon a time that caused you to suffer? Just think of something. That later on it was cleared up, that was the wrong story. And would any of you like to share a story? The before and after of your story? Yes, we have a story.
Well, it's actually still happening. So it's actually still happening, but I have really bad social anxiety. So like
You have what?
Bad social anxiety, or just anxiety. So I will do my days normally, and then I know I am doing the right things, right? But there's still this idea, as if, you know, I feel kind of schizophrenic sometimes because there's like this person behind me telling me that I'm not good and I'm not well, against me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so this is before and after because it's still happening, but it's getting better. So, yeah.
You're not as bad as you think.
Really?
Yeah. You know, okay, let's use this as an example, right? So he's saying sometimes he tells himself, what do you tell yourself? I'm bad. Okay, I'm bad, right? So imagine you had a roommate. And all day the roommate said, you know, you're bad. What would happen after a while?
You think you're bad.
You think you're bad, even though you're not, right? That's what the mind does. Because of its conditioning, it's telling us something. It's like a roommate who's constantly telling us something. But it works for you. What if you say, I'm good? Or I can be a good devotee. Or I have potential. Or I'm a good person. Completely changes. So the reality is one thing, what's going on internally is another thing, and that is creating your external reality, a totally different reality based on what our mind is telling us, isn't it? Like Sankirtan devotees have this experience. You first go out on the street and you're kind of cold and like, nobody's going to take a book, and I didn't even want to come out here, and breakfast was horrible and it's so cold, and, blah, blah, blah. I remember in Vancouver, I don't know, Gokulananda, if this was still happening when you were there, but when I first took over the temple, I could not get the devotees out on Sankirtan. They didn't want to go. It was like, I'll be ready in 10 minutes. It was like complete 100% resistance, right?
No, you were really enthusiastic, and the rest were enthusiastic when I showed up.
Yeah, we finally got enthusiastic. But the interesting thing was, at 6 o'clock, when it was time to go back, nobody wanted to go back. Everything had switched. And I think many Sankirtan devotees have this experience. You go out, it's so hard to talk to these dirty, stupid karmis. And they don't even want the books, and they just want to eat McDonald's. And why do I have to do this? And then after a while, you start meeting nice people. Like, I've been looking for this book for the last 400 lifetimes. I finally found it. And you feel so good that you finally went out there. And isn't it? And everything shifts, right? So what's going on internally is actually starting to create what's going on externally. So my experience on Sankirtan, when I'm in the fire, I look at somebody and I think, they're going to take a book. The book was already sold. As soon as I see them, I already see like a 1 minute advance, not a replay, a foreplay of the fact that I bought the book. Or I see the 1 minute foreplay, there's no way they're going to take a book. How many of you have done Sankirtan and experienced this? You've done the foreplay. This guy, look at this guy, he's got a nice suit, Gucci this and that. This guy's never going to take a book, right? Does he take a book? Never. Well, maybe occasionally. But when you think, look at this guy, he's going to take a book, usually they take, because the mind is very powerful in enabling us. So this is such an important verse for us when we want to blame a situation on somebody or some circumstance, and the Avanti Brahmin is saying, look at, people are urinating on my prasadam, and what else are they doing? Cursing me, my family kicked me out of the house, how dare they, how could they treat me this way, He's like, no, it's just, I think this is a problem. The only problem is, I think it's a problem. It's not actually a problem. Isn't that interesting? Because this is never going to happen to us. The Bhagavatam is so interesting. It creates situations which are far worse than would ever happen to us, and then people who aren't disturbed by it. So, you got your, but Prabhu, my story, you got to hear my story. I mean, Avanti Brahmin, yeah, you got to hear my story, This is really bad. It's not as bad as the Avanti Brahmin. Oh, Prabhu, I'm so fallen. Not as fallen as Jagai and Madai. So, no excuses, So, the Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, gives you these extreme stories. You can't match him. You want to complain, you can't, because the Avanti Brahmin, he could actually complain. You want to say you're fallen. Jagai and Madai could say they're fallen. Compared to Jagai and Madai, you're nothing. They committed 10 billion more sins than you'll ever commit in 1,000,000 lifetimes. So that's what's so beautiful about the Bhagavatam and beautiful about this verse. So I wanted to share something which I found in my own world of mind control, of dealing with the mind. Something which I think is extremely significant that's not really discussed so much in ISKCON. Or it's discussed, how do I say this? It's discussed, but it's not discussed. It's like we discuss it, but we don't unpack it, so we don't actually realize the implication. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes things are discussed, but they're not unpacked, so you don't actually understand the ramification. I did a course in belief management. And what I came to understand about beliefs is like subconscious. Beliefs are the source of the thoughts. So when you try to change a thought without changing the belief, the thoughts keep coming because they're a consequence of the belief. So I'll give you an example. Chanaka Pandit says that all men should see women as mother, all women should see men as son. So if you're trying to be sense-controlled, if you're trying to control yourself sexually, if you can see all men as sons and all women as mothers, it's very easy, if that's your paradigm, right? Of course, that's not our paradigm. That's not how we grew up. I don't know how the women grew up, but we as men grew up seeing women as objects of sense gratification, right? So now you become a brahmachari, and you join ISKCON, and you want, or a woman joins and say, we want to be pure. We want to think purely. So you're trying to control your mind. Have you ever tried to control your mind? It looks something like this. You ever seen someone chant like that? You can see they're trying to control their mind. It's like, you ever seen that? So they're trying to control an effect, and they're so frustrated they can't control the effect because they're not controlling the cause. The cause is the belief. And what's the belief? Women are objects of sense gratification. That's the belief. If that's the belief, the thought will naturally follow. Oh, there's a beautiful woman, I should enjoy her. Right? I was thinking this morning. I was thinking the holy name is Chintamani. And it means the holy name will give you whatever you want because Chintamani stone fulfills all desire. And I thought, whoa, for a conditioned soul, that's pretty dangerous. And then, Bhakti Marg Swami, I don't know if you've done a play like this, but this would be hilarious. Maybe you've done. You get everything you think of in your mind, it manifests. It just happens. And I was thinking, what havoc that would create if everyone here got everything they wanted. Just start imagining every thought. Whoa, look at that devotee, Oh, I hate him. I wish he were dead. Boom, he's dead. Look at so-and-so's wife. Oh, she's beautiful. I wish that. Boom. And there you are off in the bushes, It's like, so in the spiritual world, they have these desire trees, fulfill your desires. So, you got to go through 7 gates before you get in, because once you get in, everything you think of is going to happen, and we can't let anybody in there who's not thinking right. Isn't it? That would be a hilarious play. Like, look at what a mess your life would be if you got everything you thought of, right? Unless you're Krishna conscious. So, we have these fundamental beliefs, like in your example, right? So he's trying to deal with these thoughts that I'm bad, but there's a belief that something's wrong with me, or I'm not good enough, or something like that. So that belief was implanted by your mother, father, your teacher, your brother, your friends, a past life. Someone implanted it, right? And sometimes those beliefs are helpful at a certain stage of your life. Like, I'm not good enough. Maybe it was helpful. Maybe it wasn't. But some beliefs are helpful at some stages. And then you get older and they're not helpful. But we still have them because they're ingrained. Which is why samskars are so important. Why it's so important to raise children with the proper samskars. There was one devotee. He was raised in the Gurukula. He had an unfortunate upbringing. And his father took sannyas when he was young. And he was at a meeting of Gurukulis about 25 years ago. And he said, my upbringing was so traumatic that I tried to forget Krishna and forget Krishna consciousness. But you had programmed me so deeply I couldn't forget. It got in there so deeply. So he didn't even want to be a devotee. And the programming was so deeply put in there, he said, I can't not be a devotee, even though I don't want to be one, because when I think about my childhood, it was so bad, I don't want to think of ISKCON. So isn't that interesting? So the same thing, we join, like our generation, so Rolling Stones, Beatles, Jefferson Airplane, on and on. It's all in there. And I often pray to Krishna, could you give me 19 years amnesia? Just the first 19, could you wipe it out? Because it would be so much easier. Sometimes you're just walking down the street, I can't get, no, like, why am I singing this song? I haven't heard that song since 1966, and I'm singing it in 2019, like 62 years later, It's in there, it got in there. So beliefs are like that, they get in there. And so when you're trying to control your mind, sometimes what's actually happening is you're trying to control an effect, and you're not trying to control the cause. because the belief is causing the thought, and that's why it's so difficult sometimes to control the thought unless you change the belief. Does that make sense? Yes?
Well, excellent, the mental mechanics of our mind. But sometimes beliefs are, there's nurture and nature.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's our conditioning,
Yes.
or sometimes it's our upbringing, or
Yes.
environment.
Yes.
And how do we get rid of what-
Well, unless it's inherent nature like varna and ashram, that's not changeable. I say that's the hardware, and everything else is the software. So you have to know what this, like I want to make a lot of money. Sorry, Prabhu, you're not a Vaishya. You'll never make a lot of money. You can go to all the make million seminars you want, and the only $1 million guy who'll make $1 million is the one who gives the seminar. So I've seen that because I've been to a seminar like that, and the ones who aren't Vaishyas, it's like they get all the information, but they can't do it because it's not in the heart. So I think that's a problem in our society today, that you're supposed to be rich and successful, but you may be not a Vaishya. You may be a Brahmin, and Brahmins are not going to be rich. It's not their nature. Or they're not going to have rajasic success. Where's your big house, Prabhu? You're a loser, So that's our society. So we have to get over that and not try to imitate someone else's nature, which is not our nature. Then there's the pliable nature, the conditioned nature, and that if you just ask the question, if you're acting a certain way or thinking a certain way, and you want to know what the belief is that's causing it, ask yourself the question, what would someone have to believe to act this way? What would someone have to believe to think this way? What would someone have to believe to say this? And if you go back and ask the question as if it were someone else, not you, you start to understand, right? You have an example? Someone have an example? They're trying to figure out what they believe? I could help you. It would be good. What's, something you do that you don't want to do, and let's figure out the belief that's causing it. Someone want to volunteer? Something you repeatedly do that you don't want to do? Yes? Criticizing others. Okay, so we'll throw the question out, let's see what the audience comes up with. What would someone have to believe who criticizes once in a while, every day, 10 times a day? What is it? Constantly? A lot, yeah. Who's always? Always is good, at least for this discussion. What would someone have to believe who always criticizes others? Yes?
That there's going to be some kind of payoff. There's going to be some benefit or reward or fairness.
Justice,
some kind of payback.
Yeah. So it could be a belief that justice must be met out, and I have to be part of that. I'm not saying that's yours, but that's one possibility, yes? What else could it be?
Could be that I'm the ideal standard.
Yeah. I'm better than everybody?
Basically, yeah.
We were joking at breakfast. I say, I want to write a book. There's a book called, I think, The 7 Stages of Marriage. And I want to write a book on the 7 stages of being a devotee. Stage 1, everyone's a pure devotee. Stage 2, some people are pure devotees. Stage 3, only me and Prabhupada are pure devotees. Something like, have you been through those stages yet? 4 more, yeah. So everyone in ISKCON is, lower than me. But I would say, if that's the case, I think there's an obvious belief there that I'm insecure and I need to pull people down, which I would say is probably the real belief of criticism, that I'm not comfortable thinking that others are better than me because I'm not happy in my own skin. And if I pull people down, then if everyone's lower, that gives me some self-esteem because I don't have any, and the only way I can get self-esteem is to make sure I can walk on everybody's head. So that's, in your case also, that could be a problem. So, and then let's say this is the problem. So the belief is, I doubt myself. I don't think I'm smart. I don't think I'm... arrogance is the how people with low self-esteem compensate. Did you know that? You see an arrogant person, oh, he's so arrogant. No, he has low self-esteem. He comes off arrogant. Bullies, yeah, to make up for it. So let's say you want to deal with the problem. I'm always criticizing, I can't control my mind. But the problem is not what's in the mind. That's a consequence of something more subtle, that I don't feel happy with myself, or I don't feel I'm good enough, or whatever. And to feel good, I have to bring people down. That makes me feel good, because I don't tell myself I'm good, but if I say he's bad, that makes me feel good. So you understand my point? If you're trying to control it on the effect level, you have to get to the cause level. Otherwise, it's like, you'll hear, how many of you have heard more than 100 classes that you shouldn't criticize? Raise your hand. Yeah, everybody. Did it work? Okay, here's the math formula. If it's an okay class, it works for 3 days. If it's a better class, it works for 7. If it's a super class, like really got into it on criticism, dissected it, maybe it was a workshop, it may last up to 3 weeks. Yes or yes? You ever have that experience? That's it. When we were young, we'd hear these classes, so many classes, 1970, early 70s, don't eat too much, don't sleep too much. How many classes did we hear like that? So yeah, right? The big brahmachari gives we're eating too much, you pigs. Goswamis, they ate just a little buttermilk every other day. This is Krishna consciousness. Yeah, you want to advance, you have to reduce your eating, sort of like the next 3 days, we all starve ourselves, we sleep 4 hours. And then, the 4th day, we have to make up for it, right? So Govardhan plates to make up for the last 3. It doesn't work that way. You have to start changing the paradigm that I'm okay the way I am. I don't have to be like him. So if I don't, why do you want to pull him down? Because you don't like him because he's better than you. And the only way you can tolerate him is to pull him down. I mean, this is so funny, Why don't you like that, Prabhu? Because he's so smart. His fault is he's smart. I hate him because he's smart. Ugh! I hate you, Prabhu. You're so smart. Like in school, sometimes the best students are hated, right? The Chinese girl in math, that does math in her sleep. Everybody hates her. I hate you. I studied for 46 hours and I still failed, and you don't even study and you get straight A's. Can I kill you? So, isn't it? So, if, let's say, I could change the belief, I'm okay the way I am. I can be more okay tomorrow, and I can be more okay the next day. But right now I'm okay because I can't be any other way than I am. So this is how I am, so I might as well be okay with how I am. Doesn't mean I don't try to be more okay. But this is how Krishna made me. He made me with, minus 108 IQ. What can I do? It's just, I have to, but I could build a house. Okay, it's a different kind of IQ. So, if you start changing that belief, all of a sudden you'll start to see, I'm not criticizing people so much. That's really interesting. It's amazing, the belief change. And, otherwise I'm trying to stop criticizing, but we all just proved it doesn't matter how good the class is. Even if it's the best class, you only get 3 weeks probation from criticizing. And if it's an okay class, you only get 3 days. And then again, rev up the criticism engine because the belief is still there, something's wrong with me, or whatever, I need to get even, whatever it may be. Does that make sense? I came up with a paper, which I believe, I don't know how many reasons, I came up with like 25 reasons why we criticize. And it's all about different beliefs, about, what we need, what we're trying to get. Or as my wife is giving the class on needs, she will show you that sometimes it's just to fulfill a need. Something's missing in my life and I'm trying to fulfill the need. And in this case, maybe the need for self-approval. And I'm criticizing to fulfill that need. By putting them down, I feel better. Does that make sense? So this is a very, very important point. So if you see repetitive behavior, repetitive thinking, and you're unable to change it, it's because the belief is remaining the same. So ask yourself, what would someone have to believe who does? So I had an experience. My wife, years ago, she said, we're going to take dinner at 6 o'clock every evening because our daughter was in school. It was the only time the family could be together. So will you be there at 6? Yes, yes, yes. No problem. Good husband, right? And like every bona fide husband, what happens when 6 comes around? Completely forget, right? I was writing a book or article or something. So she calls me up and said, 5 minutes, dinner's ready. I go, yes, yes, no problem, right? So when you're writing, 5 minutes is an hour, basically. That's how, relative time, Einstein's relative time. Well, when you're writing, 5 minutes is an hour because an hour seems like 5 minutes. So I wrote for 5 minutes and I looked up and it was 20 to 7. And I came up, my tail between my legs, my wife's like, you're supposed to be here at 6 o'clock. And I go, yeah, I'm sorry, I blew it. But the next day I was there at 6, the next day, the next day, the next day. And so I had a realization because I had understood how beliefs work, and I realized the reason I missed when she called me was because I felt my writing was more important than being with the family. Once I shifted the belief to the family's more important, getting there at 6 was no problem. It happened automatically. Isn't that interesting? As long as I kept the belief that my work is more important, I would always be late. I'd always forget. It's like, even though I write it on my paper, 6 o'clock dinner, be there, or you'll be, is it not good? You're supposed to be there. There will be ramifications if you don't come. Even that, this is the only time you're with your family. Oh, you're going to miss that. Why? Well, you don't care. You think your writing is more important. Shift the belief. Immediately the thought, 6 o'clock, go up there. Simple, right? So I think this is extremely important because we always talk about controlling thoughts, but we don't talk about controlling the source of the thoughts, right? So there's 3 things we talked about. We talked about the selfishness and how we overcome selfishness by giving. We talked about the stories, your stories, and we talked about beliefs. Yes? So, does anyone have any questions yet? Because sometimes questions go for a long time, so yes.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so recently also, I actually just joined the devotee programs, like 4 months ago.
Uh-huh.
And now I have to face my problems. And one thing that I realized that keep coming back is I always need to be better than people. But then again, I guess it's because I just feel so insecure.
Yes, exactly. I think it's the same problem we were talking about with criticism. And what's so interesting about this is that a pure devotee is happy thinking that others are better. That's how he wants to think. And I've been preparing some courses, and one of the things we've been talking about in the courses is acceptance, like being able to accept things as they are. This is just how it is. Like, you are you. How you are right now is how you are right now. You can be better later, but being able just to accept, this is how I am, that is a very Krishna conscious attitude, because we're not trying to control anything, and we don't have a need to outdo anybody. It's just like, okay, he's better than me. Can you be happy that somebody's better than you? Can you just be happy? Is it okay? Well, I don't know. I joined before him and he's more advanced. I don't know if I can take it. It's just like, so what are you going to do about it? Well, I'll get on the internet and I'll criticize him. That way everyone will think I'm better. Well, does that make you better? Well, it makes me feel better. If that makes you feel better, something's wrong, right? So I've been meditating on this, and I'll just relate my personal experience. You probably have the same experience. There are a lot of devotees who are doing things we want to do, and they're doing it way better than we're doing it, right? And sometimes someone will say, have you gone to so-and-so's website? And so-and-so is the person who's doing what I want to do, but he's doing it way better. And inside of me is like, why would I want to go on his website? Right? You know? Instead of, cool, let me look at what he's doing. And I say, you know, he's preaching to millions of people and this and that. And I should just be like, fantastic! This is what Krishna wants me to do, what I'm doing. He's doing what he's doing. Why can't I just say, fantastic, it's okay, everything's great? That's hard, isn't it? Yes? Is it hard? Like, sometimes it's hard, you know, because I should have been, you know, he's just been a devotee 20 years. Well, look what he's doing, you know. And I think I'm, you know, the top dog. And I ended up being the top dog in a negative sense. So it's hard to accept. There's this amazing story, amazing example Prabhupada gives, which is so appropriate to this, which will help you with this. Prabhupada said, what do you do if you're envious of someone? So this is also very important in terms of controlling the mind. How do you control envy? And this also, Patanjali said the same thing. Prabhupada said, what do you do if you're envious of someone? He said, you serve them. And he said, why? He said, because if you're envious of someone, just recognize it's a perverted form of appreciation, because you wouldn't be envious of someone you didn't appreciate. You ever drive by a garbage truck and go, oh, I'm envious of that garbage collector? You ever done that? You go by a street sweeper. Oh, a street sweeper! Oh, I hate you! Yeah, you've never done that, right? But, you know, the guy drives up in the Maserati, walks out in the Gucci suit, the Rolex watch, you know, and you're like trying to figure out how you're going to pay your rent for your studio apartment. It's like, I hate you! Why do you have to have so much money? Isn't it? True or true? Yeah, it's true, right? So, but Prabhupada made an interesting point, and I heard this from another person. It's so interesting. He made the exact same point. I'll tell you what he said first. He said, if this is giving a mundane example, if you don't have money and you want to have money, don't be envious of the guy in the Maserati, because he has what you want. And if you hate him, you're hating someone who has what you want, so you're creating negativity towards what you want. You should go up to him and say, thank you, you are an inspiration to me. That's what you should say. Because you create positivity around the very thing you want, rather than I hate you because you have money and I can't even pay for my studio apartment. Right? So-and-so is preaching like crazy, and I wish I could preach like that, and I just would like to, if I ever see him, I'm going to wring his neck, and I hate you, you know. No, you go up to him and say, Prabhu, you are amazing, you're doing so much, I appreciate it so much. What have you done? You just created positivity towards the very thing you want to do. How do you achieve something if you're negative towards it? Does that make sense? So Prabhupada's saying, if you're envious, serve them. Wow. Why? Because that will counteract. You're doing the opposite of how you feel. It counteracts. It's a 180-degree turnaround. It counteracts it. Now, why would you want to be envious of someone who has what you want? It doesn't make sense. You've just put a black spot on what you want. And as far as criticism, this is really cool. You can do this if you want, and if you're teaching non-devotees. Maharaj, you'll love this. Maybe you know this. You take a big white sheet, like a flip chart, and you put little tiny black dot in the middle, and you ask everyone, what do you see? And they'll all say, I see a black dot. And you go, there's a whole white sheet there, and all you see is the black dot. You say, that's criticism. This person has done so many things, and all you see is a little black dot. You had a question, yes.
About criticism.
Yes.
I think you can move forward when you realize that you're criticizing. But
Yeah.
a lot of people, when they criticize, they think it's Krishna speaking through them to say things that people don't want to hear. So, in fact, they might be criticizing, like from the person receiving the criticism, but the person conveying the message, they don't see anything to be improved there because they're thinking they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, raise your hand if you like to be criticized. Okay, come to the front. We'll ask everyone to criticize you. No, I should. We only have one pure devotee here. Yeah. I was actually at a seminar, and this is what we did. Everyone in the seminar came to the front, and everyone criticized them in order for them to learn to be able to accept criticism. But everyone criticized with a good heart. But generally, people don't like to be criticized, obviously, right? So, this is a touchy subject, because in Vaishnava culture, we're trying to appreciate. That's the culture we're trying to create. But some criticism has to be there, but it has to be there, done at the right time, place, circumstance, and it really has to help people. You know what one of our godbrothers said? He's a guru. He said the most painful thing for a guru, and I think Maharaj will confer, is you know how to solve a problem of a disciple, but you can't tell them because they won't listen. Yes? It's the most painful thing. And then you watch them walk off the plank, fall into the river and drown. But you couldn't tell them because they wouldn't listen. So, I may see somebody doing something, you may see it. It takes no degree. You don't need a PhD to criticize. Even little kids do it. We can see what's wrong. But to be able to rectify the situation, that's not so easy. So that's also part of controlling the mind. How to deal with a situation where something is wrong, but you can't do anything about it. Then what do? How do you deal with that so you can be peaceful and not be disturbed by it? In realization that I can't do anything. Right? You've been in situations like that. This is very, very important. Because when we were talking about stories, the whole point of the story is, it's not what's happening, it's the story you put on it. So if the story is, I can't do anything about it, then why be frustrated and why think about it? Because you can't do anything. It's over. Go do something, go somewhere where you can do something. So that's also part of mind control, is to know what we can do and what we can't do. The other day, this godbrother of mine called me up and he said, he's staying in a house next to a devotee's home, and he went in the house just to say hello, and the wife was there, and she's a little fiery, and she was like, I can't talk to you now, you shouldn't come without calling first, and just really kind of abrupt. And he called me up, and he said, what should I do? I'm really upset, I'm really hurt. And I said, well, what I do is, when people deal with me like that, I just make a little mental note, that's so-and-so, and that's how so-and-so deals, and so that's what to expect, and I usually stay about 400,000 feet away from that person because I don't like to be treated that way, and it's just, that's how you deal with it. So rather than get upset and linger on, 5 days later, how dare she treat me that way, how could she do it, 26 years later, I remember that day. It was August 2nd at 2:31 and 12 seconds. The temperature was 92.6644, and this is exactly what you said. That's part of mind control. My wife and I just did a marriage workshop, and they say there's a kind of argument which is called dirty dishes. So the husband and wife are arguing, and then all of a sudden, the husband or wife brings up like 27,000 things that happened in the last 10 years, the dirty dishes, like out of nowhere, that they didn't let go. So part of mind control is to be able to respond to a situation in a way that doesn't have a negative effect on us. And even though what that lady did was wrong, that's just what she does. And when he told me, I said, oh, so-and-so, oh yeah, she did the same thing to me. And he said, what did you do? And I said, I made a note in my mind, that's what she does, and I never talked to her again. And so sometimes just avoiding it is the way you control your mind, because it's an easy way to deal with it, right? Does that make sense? Is that okay? Yes? Okay? Yeah.
Criticism, it's a statement, it's also a question.
criticism, we're trying to get rid of that. It's bad.
Yeah.
Bad energy.
Yes.
Yet criticism has its value, its
Yes.
necessity. Parents must do that. Loved
Yes.
one must
Yes.
do that
Yeah.
to each other.
Yeah.
So criticism is a positive force when it's based, founded in love,
Yes.
confidence or trust and well-wishing.
Yes.
So it's a positive force.
Well, let me quote Bhakta Abe. You know Bhakta Abe? You've met Bhakta Abe? Abraham Lincoln. He who has a heart to help has something like, he who has a heart to help has the right to criticize. Yeah. Yeah. I always joke, I said, we did actually have U.S. presidents at one time that had brains, that actually worked. Were actually human beings, or close to human beings.
An extinct species.
Yeah, unlike today, where I have one godbrother, there's an election in America. I go, well, what do you think about the election? He's so funny, he goes, we're all demons. All demons, one or the other. Anyway, yes.
Years ago, I had one godbrother say to me, if another godbrother is willing to point out some shortcoming that you have,
Yes.
then you should understand that's because they care about you.
Yes, yeah.
But when they no longer give you any more feedback, then you know you're in trouble. Because they've written you off, they realize you're a lost cause, you don't want to hear,
Yeah,
you're
it's
puffed
true.
up, you're too much false ego.
It's true. What Bhaktivedanta Purna Swami said? Someone came to him complaining that his wife was complaining about him. He said, that's good, she still has hope for you. When she stops complaining, that means she's given up on you. And it's true. Funny, but true. Yes. Hare Krishna. So, you want to do a little fun exercise? I do this with non-devotees. And we do two things. So, repeat after me. I am the mind.
I am the mind.
I am the mind.
I am the mind.
I have a mind.
I have a
I have a mind.
mind. I have a mind.
All right, which one felt right? The first or the second? Second. Everyone will say the second. You want to teach people they're not the body? Just say, repeat after me. I am the body.
I am the body.
I have a body.
I have a body.
Which one felt right? Everybody will say the second one. Okay, that was the fastest lecture I ever gave on You're Not the Body. You got it in like 2 sentences, right? So, one of the things, I've studied a little bit about Buddhism, and Buddhism says if you have a thought that you don't want, like Prabhupada said, just neglect it, just go, bye-bye thought, see you later, Which we find hard to do, isn't it? Like you get a thought, I want this, I need this, I have to have this. So, how do you deal with that idea that the thought comes in, and it's just like, it seems like that thought is us. So, I studied Buddhism a little bit, and it's helped me understand the Krishna conscious perspective. Why do we think we're the body? Why do we identify the body? We say because it's false ego, but I'm not the body. So why do I think this thought is important? Because I've identified the thought as mine. And so what happens when false ego comes in, the mind starts to make us believe that the mind is us. Have you ever been in this position where you get a thought, you want something, and you can't shake that thought? Of course you've been in that situation. Why is that? It's because the mind has taken over your identity, and the mind has said, I am you. That's false ego. False ego is all about identity, right? Isn't it? This is my country of birth, identity. I'm going to make a lot of money. I identify this is potentially mine. This is my body, identity. False ego is just putting your stamp on everything. Body, stamp. Mind, stamp. Home, stamp. Right? There's Gora's, where's your guitar? Right there, stamp. If I say, Gora, I'm taking your guitar, you go, no, it's mine. I'm not, of course, it's his. I'm not going to take it. But it's that we put our stamp. It's mine, it's mine, it's mine. So then you get a thought, you go, stamp, it's mine. And so what the mind has done is it tricked us. And because of ego, the mind took over, and now we don't distinguish between ourselves and the mind. It's just a thought, I am this thought, and therefore I do it. Have you been there before? Yeah. Yeah. So as soon as you pull back and say, I am not the mind, I observe the mind. This is a total Buddhist, stand back, observe. Be the observer of your thoughts. But there's this beautiful prayer, 11th canto, where this devotee says, basically he says, I'm fallen and I've got all these desires and, I'm pretty useless. And I'm being pulled around left and right by my mind and desires. And then he says, Krishna, if that's the way it's going to be, if that's what you want, so be it. But still, I'm not going to budge an inch from my devotion and dedication to you. That is one of the most amazing verses in the Bhagavatam, I think, because when our mind and senses are going wild, what do? We go, what can I do? My mind's crazy, isn't it? It's like, oh, I'm helpless, I can't control myself. And this Brahmin is saying, whatever, mind's going crazy, senses are going crazy, whatever, but Krishna, I'm not going to budge an inch from my bhakti to you. That doesn't make sense, does it? What has he done? He's completely disidentified from those desires. And he said, my desire is to be Krishna conscious. So I'll just let these desires, crazy desires and crazy mind, if that's where you want me to be, then that's fine, but I'm not going to budge an inch from my bhakti to you. So he's totally separated his heart, himself, and his internal desire from the craziness of his mind and senses. That's such a beautiful verse. Because that way you never have to become discouraged when your mind is going around the universe saying, you need this, you need that, you're better than him, this and that, this guy's an idiot. All the things you don't want to hear, and you just go, okay, whatever. I'm not going to bother with that. Because I want Krishna. So, okay, mind, say what you want, senses, say what you want. Forget it, I'm not going to bother with you. All I want is devotion. He's completely separated it. And that way, he's not even discouraged by it. Otherwise, you get completely discouraged, isn't it? Another day with this crazy mind. I've been a devotee in March of 70 is my 50th anniversary of my initiation. 50 years, wow. And still, this crazy mind is going strong. And unless I learn to just go, who cares? It doesn't have to stop me. It doesn't have to deter me. In spite of it, I can be completely devoted to Prabhupada. That's empowering. Otherwise, we give into it, isn't it? We just get discouraged. 50 years and I'm still. Okay, so Prabhupada's saying, neglect it. Separate it from it. It's just that conditioned mind. It just keeps going. Who cares? Good news is, when you get to a higher stage of bhakti, it'll slow down. And Krishna will be filled in it. So it's worth hanging around till you get to that ruchi. Because when you get to ruchi, it's downhill. Because everything in Krishna consciousness is beautiful and tasty. And from there, up to Nishtad, still at the top of the hill. When I was a kid, we had a hill in our neighborhood. And it was really painful to get up that hill. But once you got up, you get to ride down. So, Nishtad, ruchi, now we're down. And the rest of your bhakti is downhill. It's all taste. So it's worth tolerating. So I've taken great solace in that verse. And Nahi kalyana krit kaschid, Krishna says, one who does good will never be overcome by evil. So as long as you have the desire to be Krishna conscious, Krishna will help you. You'll be successful. As long as you don't give in and believe what your mind is thinking. Oh, I have to do this. Why? Because my mind told me. As long as you don't do that, you're fine. My mind's telling me A, B, and C, but I'm going out on Sankirtan. Why? Because that's what I want to do. Does that make sense? Hare Krishna. Okay, we still have 6 minutes. Yes?
That was a great, very useful analysis of
mental pitfalls, etc. But then there's the higher nature,
Yes.
where our intelligence,
Yes.
directed by Krishna,
Yes.
will always be around
Yes.
to pull us through this labyrinth,
Yeah.
mental labyrinth.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit of insight?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that and I forgot. We were going to do an exercise. Okay, I'll just tell you the exercise to speed it up, and then I'll answer your question. The point of this exercise was that a lot of people, they just act on the thoughts that come to their mind, and they don't create the thoughts they want. They just this thought comes. Where did it come from? I don't know. It's in there. It's in there. That means I have to do something about it, right? No, you don't. You can just like let it go or neglect it. And why not put in the thought you want? So we do this little exercise. We say, think of an elephant. Everybody thinks of an elephant. What color are elephants? They're grayish brown, right? So then we say, okay, you got the elephant in your mind, right? That elephant you thought of is like a conditioned thought. It's something you've seen before. It's just, that's what you think of when you think of an elephant. It's just natural. Now I say, imagine a pink elephant with purple polka dots. He's got a New York Yankees baseball hat. He's got Converse tennis shoes, 2 purple and 2 orange. He's got Ray-Ban sunglasses. Just deck him out. And everyone's like laughing, and everybody's got the vision. As I say, what did I just make you do? I made you put in something you never thought of before. I put thoughts in your mind. So, I'm envious of you. Could I put in a thought that I like you? I could, couldn't I? We're just not used to putting in the thoughts. We're used to dealing with the thoughts that are already there. I don't like you. That's the thought that's there. We tend to act on it, isn't it? Instead of putting in it, well, why not just put in a better thought? You could do that. You just put in a purple polka-dotted elephant with a New York Yankees hat and Ray-Ban glasses and Converse tennis shoes, purple and orange. If you can do that, you can put any thought in your mind, isn't it? So this is so simple, but how often do we do it? Choose what would you like to be thinking right now? Well, you could put that thought in your mind. You're envious of this devotee, you want to criticize him, you could put a thought in, I like him. Before I answer your question, I want to tell you something we do. This is so much fun. So we tell all the devotees, maybe we could do this sometime today. You love this exercise. We tell all the devotees, we talk about appreciation, what it is, give some guidance how to appreciate. Then we tell all the devotees, I'd like you to go around the room and appreciate every devotee. And of course they say, well, I don't know them. And say, well, you're not going to appreciate them because you need to know them. You're going to appreciate them because they're devotees. They're parts of Krishna. They're spiritual beings. So everybody goes around appreciating. And when someone appreciates you, you just say, thank you. And you can't appreciate them back till later, because then it just becomes like a game. I appreciate you're so smart. No, but you have better shoes than I do. It's not like that. Just thank you. You say, thank you. Lakshmi Mani, I appreciate 50 years of dedication to Prabhupada, and you're so smart, and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. And she just says, she's thinking, he's just flattering me. No, she doesn't think this. She says, thank you. She accepts it. And then later on she can glorify me. But it has to be genuine. And then we do this. And then the whole room is beaming. It's like everyone's smiling like ear to ear. Like, it's incredible. The energy is incredible. I did this in China. They were crying. They actually never appreciated anyone in their whole life. And seriously. Yeah, it's a cultural thing. They hold their emotions in. They don't express them. And they said this was the best thing we ever did, because they never expressed themselves. But aside from China, it's an amazing experience, right? Of just the energy it creates. Not only because you're being appreciated, but more so because you're appreciating. That's where the energy is really coming from. Then I joke and I say, okay, next exercise, go around and criticize everybody. And everyone's like, no, we don't want to do that. So you can appreciate someone if you decide to do it. You can put that thought in your head. You can actually do that. Isn't that good news? That might be the best thing in my whole class, that you can put a thought in that doesn't naturally occur. You can actually do it. You put in a purple polka-dotted elephant, so why not? I appreciate you. Does that make sense? So, in regards to Gokul Ananda's question about intelligence, what's so beautiful about intelligence in controlling the mind is intelligence thinks of ramifications. So, if I do this, the mind says, do it, it'll make you happy, it feels good. Intelligence says, if you do that, these will be the consequences. So that chastens the mind, right? And a beautiful exercise, which I do with people, but you can do this with yourself, is you have a problem. And it's, let's say, a habitual addictive behavior, and you want to give it up. Just meditate on the consequences. If you don't give up this behavior, what will be the consequences in your life 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? It's pretty depressing. to think about it. If I continue, I'm very critical, I go the rest of my life criticizing, or whatever it is I do, I'm addicted to potato chips, 12 bags a day. If I go the rest of my life eating like this, what to speak of actual, material, substantial addictions that are destroying us. And as you meditate on the consequences, multiplied by time, it becomes very sobering, right? And so this is a very powerful way, by using the principle of the greatest motivation is pain, you actually see how much pain it will cause in your life if you continue acting this way. Have you ever asked yourself, when you're addicted or attached to something, when am I going to stop thinking like this? When am I going to stop doing it? Have you ever asked yourself? Like, you have to stop? Well, my answer is, why don't you just stop right now? Because my mantra is, it's always more painful not to stop. Then whatever pain there is involved in stopping, it's always less than the pain of continuing to do it. And that's why when you do this and you look at the ramifications, you realize, if I continue to do this, it's easy to do it. It's hard to stop, but it's actually harder not to stop because I'll suffer so much pain from doing it. Does that make sense? So it's a depressing exercise, I can tell you, if you do it, but it's powerful because it engages the intelligence, because the intelligence looks at ramifications. And so when I talk about this to devotees and especially non-devotees, I say, imagine you had no intelligence. What your life would be that way. It's like, you have no intelligence. It's just the mind says, I like it, you do it. Mind says, I don't like it, you don't do it. What would your life be like then? And everyone's like, well, pretty much like a dog, And I'll say, but isn't it a fact sometimes we act without intelligence? And they all say, yeah. So it makes it clear, acting without intelligence is animal life. So intelligence is important. And the last thing I want to say, this is really, really powerful. Raise your hand if you're still alive, because I want you to listen to this. And if your person next to you is not alive, wake them up. One person, I said that, raise your hand if you're still breathing. He said, no, just ask them if they're still here. Because you could be breathing and not here. Okay, raise your hand if you're here. Okay. Now I just forgot what I was going to say. It was so good.
Intelligence and consequences.
Oh, God. I hate when this happens. This only happens when I don't sleep enough.
So it's very powerful. Whatever you're...
I'm very powerful. Hare Krishna. I'm keeping you hanging. Now I can't remember. What was I going to say?
So intelligence is Krishna's helping hand.
Yes.
He wants to help us along.
Yes.
Make the right choices and do the right thing.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And the Maha Mantra, wow, it's so powerful. It can help us conquer everything. Srila Kirti said, Prabhupada said, all your sex, all your drugs, except for the Maha Mantra, you couldn't do anything. So that's a heavy statement. But that means with the Maha Mantra we can achieve everything. And without it, nothing. So, I can't remember what I was going to say. What was I talking about? No,
it's easier to stop.
Yeah, okay, we have dog, no intelligence. So what was the next point? We have no intelligence. We act without intelligence, we'd be like animals.
More painful to give in.
Yeah, can't remember. I got so excited I forgot. I'll remember.
It'll come back.
I'll remember. Somehow our Krishna wants me to end here. Okay, so now, a word from our sponsor. I have, somehow or other, I don't know how this happened, but I wrote 3 books. I don't know how I did it, because I'm not really a writer, but... Okay, this book was a total accident. It's called Japa Affirmations. In my workshops, I've come up with affirmations, 20 affirmations. And every principle in the workshop, I turned into an affirmation, which will set your mind in the right place to chant. There's only one problem. This book is out of print, and it's being reprinted, and I only have not many. Is that all we have left?
No.
I'm not faking it. I have 500 in my suitcase. No, I only have 10 or something. But we did print it on Kindle, in a Kindle version, and you can actually order it on Amazon. So we don't have that many here. So
5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
yeah.
10, 11.
We have 11. This book was a total accident, and this is the best-selling book I have written so far. It's very, very... You know, I recorded the Brahma Samhita. That was also an accident, and that's the best-selling CD. So the conclusion is, whatever you do by accident, always is better. Okay. So this book is called Uplift Yourself, Change the World. It was written for non-devotees, but it's all the devotees like it. In fact, one testimonial, a devotee said, and I'm tooting my horn here, because I could never get a testimonial this good, even if I faked it. She said, I carry this book wherever I go, and I'm going to carry it with me into my grave. It's that good. Wow. No, this is my realizations of 47 years. I wrote it a couple years ago. 47 years of living in Krishna consciousness. My realizations in the form of little sutras, divided into 29 topics. Again, it's very good for non-devotees, but you'll like it also. And then, this is called Living the Wisdom of Bhakti. And this is all about the practical application. Like what we discussed today, that kind of mood of discussing Krishna consciousness, dissecting it, analyzing it, putting into practice. So we talk about the mind, criticism, envy, fault-finding, forgiveness, goal-setting, like all the... What I feel like, a lot of things we can't discuss in Bhagavatam, it's not part of the verse or suitable, but things we need to talk about. So it's talked about in this verse, and I think you'll really, really like it. And I this was like 10 years in the making. Originally started out as articles that got re-edited and then categorized by subject. And this is volume 1, we're working on volume 2.